Beneath the quiet deserts of New Mexico, a war may have raged that no one was ever meant to see. Whispers speak of an underground base, Dulce, where government scientists and alien beings once worked side by side in secret. Genetic experiments, psychic warfare, and silent battles fought hundreds of feet below the earth. Locals claim to hear unearthly hums at night. Former employees vanish after speaking out. Military helicopters patrol areas marked off limits to the public. Is Dulce Base the crown jewel of America's most secret project, or the greatest myth ever engineered to hide something even darker? Over the years, truth and deception have become indistinguishable. Eyewitnesses are silenced, data vanishes, and every answer only leads to more questions. This isn't just a story about aliens or conspiracies. It's a story about secrecy itself, how governments manipulate what we believe, and how fear becomes the perfect camouflage for control. So, as we descend into the maze of Dulce's mysteries, remember, some truths aren't buried to be forgotten. They're buried because someone doesn't want them found. Welcome to the Dulce Base Conspiracy, where the line between science and nightmare disappears. Paul Bennewitz was not a conspiracy theorist when his story began. He was an accomplished electrical engineer, a respected business owner in Albuquerque, and someone deeply involved in defense electronics. His company, Thunder Scientific, worked closely with Kirtland Air Force Base. By all accounts, Bennewitz was brilliant, meticulous, curious, and patriotic. But that curiosity would soon drag him into a rabbit hole that consumed his mind and sparked one of the most persistent conspiracy legends in American history. It began in the late 1970s when Bennewitz noticed strange lights moving erratically in the skies near Kirtland. They weren't like conventional aircraft, hovering silently, darting at impossible speeds, changing direction without inertia. He set up cameras and antennas on his property, determined to document what he believed were unidentified flying objects. But the deeper he went, the stranger things became. He started picking up bizarre radio signals, intermittent bursts of static and modulated tones. To his mind, they weren't random noise. He believed they were alien communications. By 1979, Bennewitz had convinced himself that something extraordinary was happening beneath the surface of northern New Mexico. He claimed to have decoded parts of the transmissions, concluding that extraterrestrials were operating a vast underground base near the town of Dulce. He wrote detailed reports filled with sketches and intercepted data and sent them to officials at Kirtland and the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Instead of being dismissed outright, his concerns were quietly entertained. Agents visited him, and according to later accounts, they didn't correct him. They encouraged him. What Bennewitz didn't know was that his discoveries coincided with several classified military programs. The strange lights he filmed may have been experimental aircraft. The transmissions he captured might have been encrypted signals from secret government tests. But rather than telling him the truth, some believe intelligence officers decided to let him spiral, feeding his alien theories to protect actual defense secrets. If true, Bennewitz became an unwitting victim of psychological warfare. As the months passed, his obsession deepened. He installed more antennas, upgraded his radio equipment, and began sleeping only a few hours each night, convinced he was under surveillance. He reported seeing small humanoid figures outside his house and believed his phone was tapped. Friends and family became worried as he withdrew further into his work. By the early 1980s, he was writing hundreds of pages about an alien-human conflict beneath Archaeological Mesa, complete with diagrams of tunnels, hangars, and multi-level chambers. To outsiders, it might have seemed like delusion, but within UFO circles, Bennewitz was hailed as a pioneer, someone brave enough to expose the ultimate cover-up. His findings spread through underground newsletters and conferences, inspiring generations of believers. Tragically, his mental state deteriorated. By mid-decade, he was hospitalized for severe paranoia. Still, his notes, tapes, and photos remained, evidence that would continue to fuel the Dulce myth long after he faded from public view. Paul Bennewitz's story is not just about aliens, it's about the human mind confronting the unknown. Whether deceived or simply mistaken, he laid the foundation for one of the most enduring legends in UFO lore. In his search for truth, he may have uncovered something very real, not about extraterrestrials, but about the shadowy line between government secrecy and obsession. By 1980, Paul Bennewitz's quiet home had transformed into a fortress of wires, monitors, and constant static. He was convinced he was listening to something extraordinary, radio transmissions between alien craft and a hidden base deep below Archaeological Mesa near Dulce. To outsiders, the signals he recorded sounded like fragmented data or random noise. But to Bennewitz, they were messages. He believed they contained words, commands, and even coordinates describing alien operations on Earth. He began to map out what he called communication grids, believing the transmissions came from underground facilities beneath the mesa and from UFOs patrolling the skies above New Mexico. The signals, he claimed, followed distinct frequencies, bursts of pulses, strange harmonics, and occasional patterns that reminded him of human speech distorted by machinery. Day and night, he recorded and analysed these sounds, often scribbling notes until dawn. Bennewitz soon began sending his findings to government agencies, pleading for an investigation. But rather than ignoring him, intelligence officials allegedly took an interest. Unbeknownst to him, Kirtland Air Force Base was the center of numerous classified programs involving advanced aircraft, radar tests, and signal experiments. To some, Bennewitz's antennas were picking up top-secret data, real but terrestrial. Instead of clarifying the confusion, certain operatives reportedly encouraged his alien theory, possibly as part of a disinformation strategy to protect those programs. Meanwhile, Bennewitz's interpretation of the signals grew more elaborate. He believed he was hearing distress calls from abducted humans held underground and reports of alien ships coordinating with military units. He drew detailed diagrams of subterranean chambers, multiple levels, elevators, and laboratories filled with hybrid entities. He described a complex system of communication between humans and extraterrestrials, involving microwave transmissions and electromagnetic beams invisible to the eye. The more he uncovered, the more paranoid he became. He installed security systems, blackout curtains, and additional antennas pointed toward Dulce. Friends said he rarely slept and spoke of invisible intruders manipulating his mind with beams. Yet in his mind, he wasn't delusional. He was a man at war with a hidden enemy. Every sound he recorded, every flicker on his oscilloscope felt like confirmation that his fears were real. Within UFO circles, Bennewitz's findings became the talk of underground conferences. Researchers like Linda Moulton Howe and William Moore visited him, drawn to his recordings and maps. Some left convinced he was onto something, others worried he was unraveling under psychological pressure. But the signals were real, at least to Bennewitz, and whether extraterrestrial or not, they transformed a local mystery into a national legend. His recordings still circulate online today, grainy, eerie bursts of tone and noise that invite interpretation. Were they military signals mistaken for alien chatter? Or was Bennewitz truly intercepting something beyond human comprehension? Whatever the truth, his signals from the sky became the first audible thread in the tapestry of the Dulce Base myth, a haunting reminder of how easily technology, secrecy, and imagination can merge into something far more powerful than truth alone. By the early 1980s, Paul Bennewitz's theory had expanded far beyond strange lights and intercepted signals. In his mind, the transmissions painted a terrifying picture of what lay beneath Archaeological Mesa. He was now convinced that an immense underground complex existed there, a multi-level facility jointly operated by humans and extraterrestrials. He called it the Dulce Base. His sketches showed 7 levels descending deep into the earth, each with its own horrific purpose: engineering on one floor, human experiments on another, and at the deepest level, genetic laboratories where alien scientists performed unspeakable experiments. Bennewitz claimed that the base wasn't just a refuge for alien visitors, but a hub of biological manipulation. He described vats filled with organs, fluids, and hybrid embryos suspended in translucent tanks. According to his writings, abducted humans were being experimented on, implanted, altered, and sometimes cloned. He wrote that some aliens were collaborating with a shadow faction of the US government, exchanging advanced technology for permission to conduct research on living subjects. It was a chilling story, too bizarre to believe, yet too detailed to ignore. His reports gained traction among underground researchers. A few alleged whistleblowers soon stepped forward, claiming to have seen blueprints of secret elevators hidden in the mesa or heard about Level 7, the nightmare floor. One claimed the base connected to other subterranean systems stretching across the country, forming a vast web of secret facilities. Bennewitz's sketches, maps, and intercepted alien communications became the foundation for these tales, and each new rumor built upon the last. By this time, Bennewitz had fully descended into obsession. He barely left his home. His house was filled with notes, diagrams, and photos. He wrote letters to senators and military officials demanding investigations into human rights violations beneath Dulce. Some of them actually responded politely, but none ever confirmed his claims. Still, his mind was set. There was no other explanation that fit his growing mountain of evidence. What made the story even more convincing to believers were the recurring UFO sightings near the mesa. Night after night, mysterious lights flickered and hovered over the desert, sometimes changing colors, sometimes vanishing in an instant. For Bennewitz, this was proof that the base was active, and that alien craft were entering and leaving through hidden access points. For skeptics, it was simply experimental aircraft or optical illusions. But in the vacuum of certainty, the myth grew stronger. By 1983, word of the Dulce base had spread across the UFO community. It wasn't just another alien landing story, it was a blueprint of a covert interspecies alliance. Dulce had become a symbol of ultimate secrecy, a place where human power met something far older and far more advanced. For Paul Bennewitz, this underground world was no longer a theory. It was the hidden truth of modern civilization, and once he believed that, there was no way back. Among the most chilling elements of the Dulce base legend is the story of the so-called Dulce War, an alleged underground battle between human military forces and alien inhabitants beneath Archaeological Mesa. It is a tale that transformed an obscure conspiracy into a full-blown saga of secrecy, bloodshed, and interspecies conflict. The story first surfaced through fragmented testimonies, most famously from a man named Phil Schneider, who claimed to have been a government engineer working on secret underground installations during the late 1970s. He claimed that while drilling tunnels for an underground expansion project near Dulce, workers accidentally broke through into a massive subterranean chamber occupied by extraterrestrial beings. The drilling crew, he said, startled the inhabitants, described as tall greys with large black eyes, and chaos erupted. Schneider alleged that security forces, including Green Berets and other specialized units, were deployed immediately. What followed, he claimed, was a deadly firefight deep underground, resulting in dozens of human casualties and several alien deaths. According to his story, the aliens used directed energy weapons that could slice through flesh instantly, leaving horrific injuries. Schneider said he was among the few survivors sustaining burns and scars he displayed as proof during his lectures. He described multiple levels of the Dulce facility, claiming that humans and extraterrestrials coexisted under an uneasy truce afterward, each controlling different sections of the base. But beneath that alliance, he said, tension simmered and distrust never faded. To skeptics, Schneider's story was fantasy, an elaborate fusion of Cold War fears and science fiction tropes. But for believers, it was confirmation of everything Bennewitz had warned about. The idea that a literal war had taken place underground electrified the UFO community. Researchers began connecting Schneider's claims to missing military personnel, secret budget reports, and unexplained radar activity in northern New Mexico during the late 70s. Even without evidence, the myth was unstoppable. As the years went on, more layers were added. Some claimed the Dulce War was part of a larger interdimensional conflict spanning multiple bases across the globe. Others said treaties were later signed between alien factions and world governments. A few even suggested the supposed firefight wasn't a battle at all, but a cleanup operation after an experiment gone wrong. The specifics changed with every retelling, but one element remained constant: the belief that somewhere beneath the sands of New Mexico, humans and extraterrestrials had once fought for control of the Earth's hidden frontiers. Even now, the Dulce War remains one of the most dramatic and divisive chapters in UFO lore. There are no documents, no photos, no physical proof, only testimony and rumor. Yet its staying power lies not in evidence, but in its story. It captures something primal, humanity's fear of losing control, of uncovering something too vast, too strange, and too dangerous to ever reveal. And whether real or imagined, the battle for Dulce Base continues to echo through the halls of conspiracy history, like a war fought not just underground, but in the shadows of the human mind. In the weeks that followed, the tone of the hospital shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. The fluorescent lights seemed to hum a little louder. The shadows in the stairwells lingered a little longer. Liam had grown quiet, more than usual. He would stop mid-sentence sometimes, as if listening for something that no one else could hear. When asked, he'd just shake his head, muttering that it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Deep down, Liam knew that the night he saw the patient with no pulse had marked a fracture between what was real and what wasn't. Every time he passed room 313, he swore he could feel a faint vibration, like a phone on silent mode buried beneath the tile. The room had been sealed after the incident. No patients, no staff, no explanation. Yet, at exactly 3:13 a.m, the motion sensors near that door flickered on without fail. The guards claimed it was just electrical interference. Liam wasn't so sure. One night, driven by a mix of dread and curiosity, he brought his phone to record the hallway. He sat behind the nurse's station, eyes fixed on the feed. The clock struck 3:13. The camera shook slightly, then refocused. Someone was standing in front of the sealed door. A figure, pale and translucent, wearing the same gown as the man from that night. The figure turned toward the camera. For a moment, Liam's breath stopped. The man's face was his own. The phone screen froze. When it resumed, the hallway was empty. The timestamp read 3:14. Liam ran down the corridor, but the air was still, the silence complete. Only the faint smell of antiseptic and burnt wiring hung in the air. That was the moment he realized. Whatever this was, it wasn't haunting him. It was becoming him. Days later, the hospital administration pulled him into an emergency meeting. The footage had leaked somehow, circulating among staff and online forums. They demanded to know how he'd gotten it, but Liam barely heard them. His head throbbed, and for the briefest instant, the overhead lights dimmed. When they came back on, every reflection in the window showed not the room, but the corridor of the third floor, the same one sealed years ago after the incident. Liam quit the next morning. He left his ID on the counter, packed his things, and disappeared into the early fog outside the hospital gates. But some say the cameras on the third floor still catch him wandering there, his reflection moving even when no one is around. The hospital tried to move on after Liam's resignation. His locker was emptied, his records archived, and his name quietly removed from the staff roster. But the silence that followed his disappearance was heavier than before, like a pressure that settled over the third floor. Some nights, the monitors at the nurse's station would flash a login attempt from L. Haynes, Liam's old employee ID. Security traced the pings to an inactive workstation, the one across from room 313. At first, staff brushed it off as a glitch, someone recycling credentials or a software error, but the pings kept coming, always between 3:12 and 3:15 a.m. And then the calls began. Short, staticky bursts from the hospital's internal line always routed to the nurse's station on the third floor. The caller ID, L. Haynes. Internal extension 313. The first nurse who answered said she heard faint breathing. Then a voice, distant but distinct. You shouldn't have opened the door. After that, she refused to work nights. The next week, 2 janitors quit after hearing footsteps behind them in a locked corridor. The hospital's administration brought in technicians to audit the system. They confirmed the line had been disconnected months earlier. Liam's extension no longer existed in their network. Yet the logs showed active outgoing calls. When one technician stayed late to observe, he left before dawn, pale and trembling. He refused to explain what he saw, only muttering that the voice on the line wasn't human anymore. Rumours spread online. Some said Liam's footage had resurfaced on a hidden forum, except this time it showed him standing inside room 313, whispering something to the camera before the feed cut to static. Others claimed to receive strange calls after viewing it, always with a distorted version of their own voice repeating, "You're next." By the third week, the hospital closed the third floor entirely, citing maintenance and electrical safety issues. But those who passed the hallway after hours still swore they heard the faint echo of a phone ringing behind the sealed door, an endless, unanswered call from somewhere between the living and the dead. When the calls began reaching outside the hospital, the story of Liam Haynes turned from an internal mystery into a full-blown urban legend. The first to receive one was Mara, a former patient from the 3rd floor. She had been discharged weeks before Liam vanished. One night, her phone buzzed at 3:13 a.m., the same time his hospital calls were said to occur. Half asleep, she answered, expecting silence. Instead, a man's voice whispered through layers of static. "Mara, it's Liam. Don't let them find me." Then the call ended with the sound of an old hospital monitor flatlining. She reported it to the authorities, but they dismissed it as a cruel prank. Yet her call history showed something impossible. The call originated from Dulce Medical's internal line, extension 313. Within days, others began to report similar calls. A retired nurse, a hospital orderly, even Liam's younger sister Clara. Each described the same voice, the same time, and the same distorted message pleading for help or warning them to stay away from room 313. Clara, desperate for answers, returned to the hospital, only to find the 3rd floor sealed with heavy steel doors and new warning signs. A night security guard, shaken and reluctant, admitted that the phones on that floor had been ripped out weeks ago, but sometimes, when he did his rounds, he'd hear them ringing anyway. When Clara pushed further, she uncovered something stranger, a hospital report that Liam had filed before his disappearance. It described anomalous patient behavior in room 313, episodes of patients speaking in perfect synchronization, describing things they couldn't have known, like future deaths of other patients. He believed the hospital's networked monitoring system was somehow recording consciousness, merging fragments of dying minds into the digital system itself. His theory was dismissed, but the report vanished shortly after he disappeared. Now, those who received the calls claimed more than just words. They heard faint background sounds, footsteps, mechanical hums, the beeping of monitors, as if the call was being made from inside the hospital itself. One paranormal investigator suggested that whatever Liam discovered had turned the 3rd floor into a digital afterlife, a corrupted echo of every consciousness that had passed through it. As the legend spread, forums lit up with recordings. Some users claimed to have hacked the hospital's dormant phone system and received fragments of Liam's final message. In one clip, a voice says clearly, "Don't answer the next call. It's not me anymore." Clara waited until midnight before slipping through the chain-link fence behind Dulce Medical. The hospital had been officially shut down for infrastructure remediation, but the parking lot lights still hummed, and the security cameras still swept their slow, mechanical arcs. She moved like a shadow, clutching a flashlight and the printed copy of Liam's final report, the one he'd written just days before vanishing. Inside, the air was thick with dust and silence. The elevators were dead, so she took the stairs to the 3rd floor, the one sealed since the incidents began. The hallway beyond the barricade was colder, almost unnaturally so. Her breath fogged the beam of her flashlight as she advanced. The walls were stripped bare, the floors marked with long scratches that didn't look mechanical. Halfway down the corridor, she passed an old nurse's station. A single monitor flickered to life on its own, glowing pale green. Across the screen, words began to type themselves. "Welcome back, Clara." She froze. The report in her hand mentioned the same behavior, the network responding to input without human interaction. As she backed away, the intercom clicked on, releasing a faint hum. Then, Liam's voice echoed softly, "Don't let them shut it down." They're trapped here. Heart pounding, Clara reached room 313. Its door was welded shut, the number plate scorched black. She pressed her ear against it. From inside came the faint sound of a heart monitor. Impossible, after all this time. She took a crowbar from her bag, wedged it into the frame and forced the door open. The air inside spilled out like a breath held too long. Inside, the room was not like the others. The walls were lined with old computers connected by tangled wires, and in the center stood a single hospital bed beneath a flickering light. On it lay a figure, motionless under a white sheet. As she approached, the machines came alive, displaying neural patterns and cardiac data. Then a distorted voice whispered from one of the monitors, "Clara, you found me." She pulled the sheet away, but the body underneath was unrecognizable, the face half dissolved, half digital, as though it was phasing between physical and projected. The features flickered between static and flesh. The voice returned, now clearer. "They tried to store us." It worked. The machines began to surge, lights strobing in sync with her racing heartbeat. Data filled the screens, hundreds of names, patient IDs, and snippets of medical logs flashing by too fast to read. Then the words appeared again. "Dulce unit, phase 1 complete." The power died. The screens went dark. In the silence that followed, Clara's flashlight flickered, revealing a message scrawled across the far wall in red. "They're still building below." Clara fled, but as she reached the stairwell, she could hear it again. The faint, rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor coming from room 313. Only now it pulsed in sync with her own heartbeat, echoing faintly through the darkness. When Clara left the hospital, she didn't stop driving until the desert swallowed the skyline. Her GPS said she was headed toward Dulce, New Mexico, a small, quiet town surrounded by mesas and reservation land. But to those who'd studied the stories, Dulce wasn't just another desert settlement. It was ground zero for one of the strangest, most persistent conspiracy theories in modern history, the Dulce base. According to the stories, somewhere beneath Archuleta Mesa, a sprawling underground facility extended for miles. It was said to be a joint human-alien installation where genetic experiments, hybrid breeding, and psychic research took place, a secret continuation of Cold War black projects. Clara didn't believe in aliens, but after what she saw in room 313, she couldn't shake the feeling that her brother's discovery, "they're still building below," was pointing her here. When she arrived, Dulce seemed ordinary. A gas station, a diner, a few motels, and a tribal police station that watched outsiders carefully. But the air was heavy, expectant. When Clara started asking about the base, conversations ended abruptly. The waitress at the diner smiled politely and said, "People talk too much around here. You should get some rest." The sheriff's deputy she approached told her flatly, "There's nothing under the mesa but rock. Let it stay that way." Yet strange details stood out. Trucks with no markings drove through town at night, heading toward the mesa. Locals claimed to hear humming from beneath the earth like turbines buried deep below. Livestock mutilations had quietly resumed after a decade of silence. And when Clara showed a photo of room 313's wall, the message "they're still building below," an elderly Apache man went pale. He whispered, "The ones below don't forget." They listened through the wires. As night fell, Clara drove toward the mesa. A security fence stretched across the base of the rock formation, dotted with no trespassing signs and motion sensors. Through her binoculars, she saw faint lights flickering halfway up the slope. Not campfires, but white-blue glows pulsing in rhythm, as if part of a system activating deep underground. She recorded everything, narrating into her phone, "This is Clara Haynes. The hospital wasn't an isolated case. The same energy readings are here, the same hum beneath the ground." Then from behind her, headlights appeared. A black SUV crested the hill, silent except for the crunch of gravel. She ducked behind her car, heart racing. The vehicle stopped, idled for a moment, then drove back toward town. But in that brief silence afterward, she heard it, a deep, mechanical pulse emanating from beneath her feet. Back in town, she uploaded her recordings to an encrypted server. The next morning, the files were gone. Her laptop wouldn't start, and when she stepped outside her motel, the locals wouldn't meet her eyes. The same waitress from before simply said, "You should go now, before the night comes." As she packed her things, Clara glanced one last time toward Archuleta Mesa. For a moment, she thought she saw lights blinking in a deliberate pattern, like a signal. She turned away and drove off. But long after she disappeared down the highway, the mesa kept glowing, its pulse echoing faintly through the desert wind, as if answering something buried deep below. After the site was sealed off, the Tooth Vault became a phantom. Officially, it never existed. Unofficially, it became the center of whispered conversations in university halls, old military bars, and encrypted online boards. Former government contractors spoke of Project Mola, a codename allegedly tied to biological resilience experiments from the late 1950s. The theory went that the teeth found in the vault weren't remnants of an ancient civilization, but byproducts of failed human enhancement research, projects intended to strengthen bone density and regenerative capacity in soldiers. Satellite scans of the restricted zone revealed fresh structures, reinforced bunkers, power generators, and a communication relay pointing skyward. Local hikers reported drone activity that followed them for miles. One man claimed to have discovered a discarded hazmat glove near a stream, marked with a red insignia reading Division 13. When he brought it to the police, the item vanished from evidence within days. Independent journalists tried to trace the funding behind these mysterious operations. The paper trail led to shell companies tied to medical technology firms, many of which had classified contracts with the defense sector. One such company, SynBioCore, was known for pioneering regenerative dental tissue and had quietly filed for bankruptcy right before the tooth vault's discovery. The deeper investigators dug, the more the narrative twisted. Why would a government bury its own past? Some believe the vault held proof that human evolution had been artificially manipulated, either by our own species in prehistory or by something far older guiding us. A few dared to suggest the tooth network was a living archive, a biological storage of genetic memory. Whatever truth the government uncovered, it clearly frightened them. Surveillance increased, leaks were silenced, and one by one, those who pursued the mystery disappeared behind a wall of bureaucracy and silence. The tooth vault wasn't just a discovery, it had become a national security threat. Beneath the sterile light of the containment chamber, the teeth began to hum. It wasn't a sound at first, more like a vibration that technicians felt deep in their bones, like the low resonance of machinery or an animal growl beneath the threshold of hearing. The scientists monitoring the samples reported irregular energy readings, small electromagnetic pulses emitted in rhythmic waves, synchronized as if responding to each other. When they tried to separate the teeth into different containment units, the pulses grew erratic, violent, cracking glass and overloading sensors. The government labeled this phenomenon bioresonant echo, but among the researchers a new phrase took hold: the teeth remember. They theorized that the ancient material contained trace biodata, an organic memory storage medium predating humanity's known history. Some of the most daring suggested it was not just a fossilized record, but a living network of stored consciousness, reacting to its rediscovery after centuries of isolation. A linguist brought in to analyze the micro-engraved patterns on the teeth noticed fractal repetition, symbols within symbols, identical to prehistoric cave marks found from Siberia to Patagonia. When mapped digitally, the patterns resembled a neural structure, like a brain's firing network frozen in enamel. These findings were immediately classified, and the linguist was reassigned to an unnamed department. Inside the lab, strange anomalies escalated. Magnetic compasses spun without reason, power surges fried delicate instruments, security footage began to distort at specific intervals, always when the teeth emitted their pulse. In one clip, a researcher standing beside the containment unit vanished for 2 full seconds of missing footage. When the tape resumed, she was standing in the same position, but her expression was vacant, her eyes unfocused. She later reported seeing something, faces made of bone and ash, though the memory dissolved as soon as she tried to write it down. It was as if the teeth weren't just remembering, they were communicating. The patterns pulsed in sequences too structured to be random. Attempts to block the signal failed. Faraday cages and lead barriers made no difference. The readings continued, sometimes even from samples that had been supposedly destroyed. One night, the monitoring equipment began displaying letters instead of numbers, brief flashes on the screen forming what appeared to be ancient glyphs. Linguistic experts tried translating, but all interpretations converged on a single meaning: we are beneath. The message spread through the classified networks like wildfire. Some thought it was a hoax, a hacker exploiting fear. Others feared it was literal, that whatever intelligence had encoded itself in those relics wasn't gone, only dormant, buried somewhere deep within the earth, waiting for recognition. Then, without warning, the pulses stopped. All readings went flat. The teeth, once humming with strange vitality, turned cold and inert. The research teams were dismissed, equipment was confiscated. The site went dark, but those who had witnessed the final transmission swore the silence wasn't peace. It was a pause, like something ancient had realized it was being watched and was now watching back. When the pulses stopped, most believed the phenomenon had finally burned out. But deep beneath the containment site, seismic monitors told a different story. Small, rhythmic tremors began radiating from a point miles below the tooth vault, too regular, too patterned to be natural. A special operations team was dispatched under the guise of a geological inspection. Their orders were simple: descend, document, and recover anything that matched the biological samples. The descent began at dawn. The team entered through a service shaft sealed since the 1980s, originally part of a Cold War bunker network. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of rust and something older, like petrichor mixed with decay. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing tunnels that shouldn't have existed, natural stones seamlessly merging with man-made steel. The deeper they went, the clearer it became that someone or something had already been digging from below. At 2,000 feet, they reached a vast hollow chamber carved into the bedrock. Its walls shimmered faintly, embedded with fossilized material that looked disturbingly organic, bone-like lattice fused with mineral. One operative brushed the wall and recoiled as the stone pulsed softly beneath his touch, like it was alive. Beneath a layer of dust, they discovered carvings, thousands of them, depicting humanoid figures kneeling before enormous skeletal entities with teeth like rows of blades. As they set up their equipment, an anomalous reading spiked. A heat signature was detected beyond the wall, moving. They followed it through a narrow passageway until the path opened into what looked like a subterranean vault. Inside, arranged in circular patterns, were hundreds of enamel fragments identical to the tooth vault samples, only these were fused into the floor itself, forming what resembled a colossal neural map. When their lights flickered, one operative reported hearing whispers not through his ears but inside his skull. The audio logs captured faint static punctuated by a sound like breathing. Then the power failed. Night vision footage showed movement in the dark, shadows flickering between the team. One by one, their signals vanished from the surface monitors. The final transmission came from the mission leader, his voice barely audible over the interference. Oh, it's not just remembering, it's building. Hours later, a tremor shook the area. Surface personnel sealed the shaft. The report was buried under subterranean structural collapse, no survivors. But in the weeks following, nearby towns reported strange subterranean sounds, like the grinding of teeth beneath the earth. The government denied the expedition ever took place. Yet, anonymous footage surfaced on the dark web showing helmet cam video of the vault, the carvings, and something moving behind translucent stone. The clip ended abruptly, but one frame captured what looked unmistakably like a face, its features distorted, its mouth wide and filled with teeth, all fused together in a spiral. 2 weeks after the failed descent, the Tooth Vault's containment facility, now under full lockdown, began to receive an anomalous transmission. It wasn't coming from any satellite or local source, but from deep underground. At first, it appeared as background noise, bursts of static buried in electromagnetic interference. But as analysts filtered the signal, patterns began to emerge, repeating sequences identical to the pulse rhythms emitted by the teeth before they went silent. The technicians who first decoded the sequence realized with dread that it wasn't just a repetition, it was an answer. A reversed version of the original data, as if something had received the earlier pulses and was now sending its reply. When the waveforms were converted to audio, the sound was inhuman, a chorus of layered tones that resembled a deep, resonant breathing, almost language, but not quite. Spectrogram analysis revealed strange, glyph-like shapes forming within the sound, resembling the carvings from the subterranean chamber. Military intelligence units seized the data immediately, classifying it under a new code, Echo Protocol. Linguistic and AI teams were ordered to translate the signal, but within days, several analysts complained of auditory hallucinations. They heard voices embedded in the static, whispering their names or describing things they hadn't told anyone. One analyst reportedly went missing after claiming the message wasn't just sound, it was a summons. Then, a new event shook the facility. The inert tooth samples began reacting to the signal, vibrating at a frequency identical to the transmission. Monitors registered electromagnetic surges that grew in sync with each pulse. Security footage showed the samples shifting slightly on their trays, rotating toward the same direction, as if orienting toward a distant source. The technicians attempted to shut down the lab's power grid, but the vibrations persisted even after full disconnection. Emergency response protocols triggered a lockdown. Lights dimmed, backup systems flickered to life. In the darkness, the low hum returned, rising, resonating through walls and bodies alike. A scientist in the control room screamed as the glass barrier between chambers began to warp, bending inward as though responding to pressure from the other side. And through the chaos, a voice emerged from the comms feed, distorted but unmistakably human, repeating the words, "They remember. They are awake." When the power finally stabilized, every containment unit was empty. The teeth had vanished. The floors were scorched with spiral patterns identical to those in the cavern. In the aftermath, all remaining personnel were detained, and the site was declared contaminated by an unknown pathogen. The official report cited a system failure and gas leak, but those who survived swore they still felt it, the vibration deep beneath their feet, like the earth itself was breathing again. After the Tooth Vault facility was declared neutralized, all evidence, biological, digital, and structural, was quietly transported to a high-security repository known only by rumor as the Black Archive. Officially, the site did not exist on any registry. In reality, it was buried beneath a decommissioned military base in Nevada, where access required multiple biometric verifications and layered psychological screening. It was where the government stored what couldn't be explained, what couldn't be destroyed, and what couldn't ever reach the public. A convoy of armored trucks arrived under heavy escort one night, carrying the sealed containment units that once held the teeth. But inside the archive's subterranean vaults, something began to interfere with the security systems. Surveillance cameras showed static, audio feeds distorted into that same rhythmic hum first detected months earlier. One by one, corridors lost power, plunging entire wings into silence. Archive personnel worked in pairs, citing unexplained auditory hallucinations whenever they were alone. One technician claimed to hear whispers from behind the reinforced walls, voices murmuring in forgotten languages, overlapping like a chorus of memories. A military overseer ordered a full electromagnetic sweep, but the readings went off the charts. The hum grew stronger, shifting from sound to sensation, vibrating through the concrete as if the entire facility was resonating. Then, the containment crates began to move. Cameras recorded one sliding several inches across the floor by itself, its metal frame buckling under invisible pressure. From within came the unmistakable sound of something scraping, soft at first, then rhythmic, almost deliberate. When the doors were forced open, they found the interior empty. Only fine dust remained, shaped faintly like teeth disintegrated mid-formation. But it wasn't just dust. Microscopic scans showed cellular activity, as if the material wasn't dead, but migrating. That night, the base lost all external communication. Emergency teams dispatched to investigate found the main vault doors sealed shut from the inside. It took hours to cut through the reinforced plating, and when they did, the archive was empty. Every containment unit, every specimen, gone. The walls were etched with spiraling impressions, patterns consistent with the previous resonance events. Footage retrieved from a damaged drone inside the facility showed the final moments. The walls themselves seemed to move, folding inward like muscle tissue closing around bone. In the center of the room, something glowed, a lattice of light in the shape of a human jaw, slowly dissolving into the concrete before the signal cut. The site was buried the following morning. Concrete poured into every corridor. No personnel were listed as survivors, and but a week later, seismic sensors across the western US registered low-frequency vibrations spreading outward from beneath Nevada, matching perfectly the rhythm of the return signal. When seismic activity spread across the American Southwest, most scientists dismissed it as natural tectonic stress. But those who had worked on the Tooth Vault project recognized the rhythm immediately, It wasn't random. It pulsed in exact frequency patterns, 5 seconds apart, repeating like a heartbeat. The data pointed toward one location, northern New Mexico, Dulce, the supposed site of the first discovery. Local residents began reporting strange phenomena. Livestock vanished overnight, leaving behind only circular impressions in the soil, spiral grooves that vibrated faintly when touched. Power outages rippled through the region, accompanied by deep subterranean rumbles that shook windows but left no seismic trace. One night, multiple witnesses described a beam of pale light erupting from the base of Archaeological Mesa, followed by a series of low, rolling sounds like grinding bone. When a private geotechnical survey team was dispatched to investigate, their instruments detected a hollow void beneath the mesa, vast and structured, stretching for miles. The data showed geometric corridors and heat signatures moving within. Before the team could release their findings, they were detained by unidentified agents, and all digital records vanished. Still, fragments of their data leaked online, enough to show a chilling reality. Something beneath Dulce was awake and expanding. The vibrations intensified over the next few days. Drones sent into old mine shafts returned distorted footage showing pulsing walls and fluid-like movement within solid rock. The footage ended abruptly, but not before a massive shape was captured. A skeletal outline coiled through the cavern, its surface glistening like enamel. The analysts who viewed it described feeling physical nausea, as though the image itself carried an electrical resonance. Then came the breach. At 3:47 a.m., satellite sensors detected a thermal surge directly beneath Dulce. The ground split open in multiple locations, releasing a plume of luminous vapor that shimmered like heat over ice. Witnesses across the region reported hearing a single deep vibration that made their teeth ache. Surveillance satellites briefly recorded the formation of a spiraling pattern, miles wide, carved into the desert floor, glowing for exactly 12 minutes before fading completely. By dawn, the tremors stopped. Dulce returned to silence. The government sealed the area under the guise of geothermal instability, yet reports of low-frequency sounds like subterranean breathing persisted. In one leaked recording allegedly captured near the mesa, a faint whisper can be heard beneath the static. The vault was never a prison. It was a mouth. The meaning remains uncertain. Some believe the resonance network beneath Dulce connects to other sites worldwide, each one a buried node of an ancient intelligence that uses biological material to preserve memory. Others fear the breach marked the beginning of something, an awakening of whatever had been waiting beneath the earth since before recorded history. The hum has not stopped. It's just moved deeper. The Dulce-based conspiracy didn't die with the Cold War. It evolved. As the world went online, so did the legend. What was once whispered in bars or printed in fringe newsletters is now dissected across encrypted forums, conspiracy subreddits, and the dark web. The myth has adapted to a new battlefield, the digital age, where truth and fabrication blend seamlessly into one endless feed. In the late 2000s, so-called digital whistleblowers began uploading alleged classified documents to obscure file-sharing sites. Some claim to have accessed old Air Force servers, uncovering project names that echoed earlier Dulce terminology: Blue Light, Project Sigma, Biocontainment Unit 23. Others posted pixelated images showing deep tunnels under the mesa, illuminated by eerie green light. None of these sources were ever verified, but they reignited the Dulce story for a new generation. People raised on screens, not radio static. By the 2010s, the conspiracy evolved again. Anonymous hackers and disinformation networks began weaving Dulce into larger narratives about underground cloning programs, secret gene banks, and extraterrestrial technology recovered from crash sites. On message boards, lines blurred between fact and fiction as AI-generated leaked footage emerged, grainy scenes of scientists walking through metallic corridors. Digital timestamps cropped and altered. Some were debunked, others vanished before analysis, but the chaos only fueled the intrigue. Even major data leaks like WikiLeaks and Snowden's revelations were pulled into the orbit of Dulce's speculation. Conspiracy theorists claimed that certain redacted documents mentioned joint bioengineering operations in remote US territories. No evidence proved any connection, yet the timing and secrecy made it easy for speculation to thrive. In the last few years, technology added another twist: AI. Deepfake videos now circulate depicting alien autopsies or military briefings allegedly recovered from Dulce. The quality is unnervingly high, blurring the boundary between entertainment, hoax, and potential truth. Digital archaeologists, independent researchers, and cyber forensics experts try to separate code from content, but even they admit the information space is too corrupted to know what's real anymore. And that's perhaps the most chilling truth of all. Dulce may have started as a hidden facility, but now it exists everywhere, across servers, hard drives, and neural networks. The real base isn't beneath the mesa anymore, it's beneath our fingertips. Because in the age of information, secrecy no longer hides underground. It hides in plain sight, buried under layers of noise. Every file, every leak, every viral clip could be a revelation, or a weaponized lie designed to keep us chasing shadows while the truth shifts one step further out of reach. Beneath every rumor of alien collaboration at Dulce Base lies a darker, more human possibility. The idea that the real experiments were never about extraterrestrials at all, but about us. For decades, whispers have persisted of psychological and neurological research hidden under the mesa, projects designed to map, manipulate, and ultimately control the human mind. The roots of these rumors stretch back to the mid-20th century, during the Cold War, when the CIA's MK-Ultra program was declassified. Those documents revealed that US intelligence had indeed experimented with hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and hallucinogens to test mind control on unwitting subjects. For conspiracy researchers, Dulce Base became the spiritual successor to MK-Ultra, a place where such experiments continued long after the official shutdown in the 1970s. Whistleblowers from the region have described strange encounters, workers claiming to hear voices in their heads, technicians who suddenly suffered from vivid hallucinations after visiting certain levels of the supposed base. Others reported seeing rooms filled with monitoring chairs wired to human subjects, screens displaying their brainwaves in real time. Whether true or imagined, these testimonies suggest a facility devoted not to studying aliens, but to mastering consciousness itself. In the 1990s, another layer of intrigue emerged. Some alleged leaked papers mentioned Project Garnet, Neural Bridge, and cognitive synchronization trials. The names alone fueled panic online. What if the supposed hybrid experiments were metaphors for something more terrestrial? Experiments in merging biology and a machine, training human brains to interact with artificial intelligence. Modern science makes this theory disturbingly plausible. Agencies like DARPA and private defense contractors are now developing neural implants, brain interface devices, and emotion recognition AI systems. These are public projects. So, if that's what they're willing to admit, what could still be hidden beneath layers of classification? Some psychologists argue that the Dulce mind control theory symbolizes society's fear of losing autonomy in the digital age. The more technology merges with biology, the more blurred our sense of agency becomes. Maybe the aliens in the Dulce myth aren't extraterrestrials, but metaphors for an intelligence evolving beyond us, born from our own experiments. Still, the human testimonies remain chilling. People who claim to have been abducted near Dulce often describe cold laboratories, bright lights, and clinical procedures that feel more human than alien. Some recall seeing scientists in military uniforms, never extraterrestrial beings. Could those memories have been products of trauma, dreams, or implanted suggestions? Or were they fragments of something deliberately erased from public memory? If the Dulce Base conspiracy holds any truth, perhaps its most terrifying revelation is not that aliens have infiltrated our world, but that humans have been experimenting with their own species, reshaping the mind in pursuit of control. The walls of Dulce, real or imagined, may simply echo an ancient fear that one day we'll lose the ability to tell our own thoughts from those programmed into us. If Dulce Base was truly just one node in a vast system, then what else lies hidden beneath the Earth? This question drives the final, most expansive chapter of the conspiracy. According to declassified documents and speculative researchers, the US government has built a vast underground network stretching coast to coast, a web of deep military installations, secret laboratories and transit tunnels said to connect facilities like Dulce Area 51, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Cheyenne Mountain. Some claim these are simply Cold War relics designed for nuclear continuity. Others, however, insist that beneath the official structures lies something deeper, a joint human extraterrestrial infrastructure managing hidden technology and interspecies research. Whistleblowers and anonymous insiders have described high-speed magnetic trains linking these subterranean complexes, allegedly traveling beneath major cities at incredible speeds. From California's desert to Virginia's mountains, each base is said to specialize in a different domain: biotech, propulsion, hybridization, or communications. What's striking is how similar the accounts are, despite originating decades apart. Even the architectural details, the cold, sterile corridors, the multi-level elevators, the restricted sections, mirror those first described in the Dulce testimonies. In recent years, aerial LIDAR and satellite imaging have revealed strange underground anomalies across the Southwest, fueling speculation that at least some parts of the myth might have real-world foundations. Yet, every time researchers close in, they meet the same wall: restricted zones, classified operations, and disinformation campaigns. It's almost as if the secrecy itself has become the system's greatest defense. To those who believe, Dulce was only the beginning, a testing ground for a larger agenda stretching beneath not just the US, but the entire planet. There are rumors of similar bases in Russia, China, and Antarctica, where governments might cooperate under a hidden treaty to manage contact with non-human intelligences. Some call it the shadow grid. Whether real or not, the idea persists because it reflects something undeniable. There are places we are never meant to see, projects we are never meant to know, and forces, human or otherwise, that thrive in silence. Dulce, in that sense, is no longer just a conspiracy theory. It's a symbol of the unknown itself, buried deep beneath the world we think we understand. As whispers of Dulce and the hidden network continued to echo through the internet, another strange phenomenon began: the systematic disappearance of evidence. Forums that once hosted early Dulce documents vanished overnight. Websites that archived leaked photos or testimonies suddenly went offline, often citing server failures or copyright claims from obscure entities. Some researchers claimed their emails were wiped or their storage drives corrupted just as they prepared to release new findings. Whether coincidence or something more, these disappearances reinforced one chilling idea: someone was cleaning up the trail. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, many who had once spoken out about Dulce faded from public view. Paul Benowitz, the man whose story started it all, had long since passed, his legacy rewritten as delusion. Phil Schneider, the engineer who claimed to have survived a battle underground, died under controversial circumstances. Others recanted or withdrew, often citing fear or exhaustion. Even journalists who investigated these cases found their sources going silent. It was as if the deeper one dug, the faster the ground closed back up. Documents that once circulated among UFO researchers, blueprints, alleged memos, photos, were increasingly debunked or discredited. But skeptics noticed something odd: the pattern of suppression itself. Instead of merely ignoring conspiracy claims, official channels seemed to subtly redirect or drown them under waves of conflicting information. It became nearly impossible to separate fact from fabrication. Disinformation had become a weapon, turning curiosity into confusion. In the end, the truth, whatever it once was, became lost beneath a fog of contradictory narratives. Today, the Dulce story stands at a strange crossroads. It's both everywhere and nowhere, a piece of digital folklore passed from generation to generation, altered with every retelling. Some believe the government let the myth grow precisely because it serves as camouflage. If the public can't agree on what's real, then nothing can ever truly be proven. Others argue that the entire thing, Dulce, hybrids, battles, bases, was itself a psychological operation designed decades ago to divert attention from real black projects hidden under the same deserts. Either way, the Dulce Base saga ends where it began, in secrecy. Beneath layers of denial, myth and manipulation, the truth, if it ever existed, has been buried deeper than any underground facility could reach. And perhaps that's the final lesson. Not all cover-ups rely on force or fear. Some are built on confusion, on the careful engineering of uncertainty. Because when you no longer know what to believe, the truth can hide in plain sight, unseen, unprovable, and untouchable. Long after the last alleged witness vanished and the final whistleblower's voice went silent, the legend of Dulce Base continues to breathe, not through documents or physical proof, but through humanity's timeless hunger to understand what lies beyond the veil. The Dulce story is no longer just about aliens or government secrets. It's about the boundary between fact and faith, between the world we see and the one we sense. Whether real or imagined, Dulce became a mirror reflecting our deepest fears of hidden power, of manipulation, of losing control over the truth itself. Every decade reshapes the myth. To one generation, Dulce was proof of extraterrestrial contact. To another, it symbolized the shadowy side of science, the cost of progress hidden underground. And to modern audiences raised in the digital age, it's a metaphor for information itself, buried, fragmented, censored, and endlessly distorted. Conspiracy theorists, skeptics, and storytellers alike now share one strange connection. Dulce has become the shared campfire of the unknown, where humanity gathers to trade stories about the monsters beneath its feet. Even skeptics admit something unusual happened in the mesas of northern New Mexico. Whether it was a Cold War experiment, a psychological operation, or something else entirely, the result is undeniable, a myth that refused to die. It persisted through ridicule, evolved through the internet, and transcended its origins to become a global symbol of secrecy. Like Roswell before it, Dulce transformed into a cultural touchstone, a modern myth with ancient roots. The fear that powerful forces, seen or unseen, control destinies from the shadows. But maybe that's the real revelation. Dulce Base, in its ambiguity, shows how the human mind creates meaning in mystery. Faced with uncertainty, we weave stories to fill the void. Some become cautionary tales, others movements of belief. And every time a researcher vanishes, every time a file is deleted, or a strange light flickers over the New Mexico horizon, the story reignites. Dulce is less a place now, and more an idea. A reminder that secrecy breeds speculation, and speculation keeps the unknown alive. Perhaps, in some deep chamber beneath the desert, the truth still waits, sealed behind steel doors and classified documents. Or perhaps the truth was never physical at all. Maybe Dulce's greatest secret was the one hidden within us, that the mystery itself is what keeps us searching, because as long as we look into the dark and wonder what's really there, Dulce Base will never truly be forgotten. As the lights fade on the Dulce Base conspiracy, one question lingers in the silence. What if it was never just a story? For decades, whispers of alien collaboration, underground genetics labs, and silent wars beneath the desert have woven themselves into America's cultural fabric. But beyond the claims and counterclaims, beyond the strange symbols and mysterious disappearances, there lies something far more unsettling: the human need to believe that our world is being guided, watched, and shaped by something greater, something unseen. Maybe that's the true heart of the Dulce mystery. Not the question of reptilian hybrids or secret bases, but the mirror it holds up to us. Every era invents its own monsters to explain the darkness it cannot face. For the ancients, it was gods and demons. For the 20th century, it was UFOs and secret experiments. And today, it's data, corporations, and the digital panopticon that sees everything, remembers everything, and answers to no one. Whether Dulce Base truly exists may never be proven, but the pattern it represents, the overlap of secrecy, power, and fear, is real and recurring. From Cold War bunkers to modern black-budget projects, from the CIA's MKUltra experiments to whispers of Area 51, humanity's pursuit of dominance often hides in the shadows of plausible deniability. And that's what gives the Dulce myth its enduring power. It feels possible. What we've uncovered throughout this series isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's a portrait of our modern condition. Governments shroud their most sensitive operations in silence. Corporations collect more data about our lives than any intelligence agency in history. Science pushes boundaries faster than ethics can follow. The line between truth and deception has never been thinner, and in that uncertainty, the Dulce narrative thrives, feeding on both paranoia and possibility. So perhaps the real question isn't whether aliens live beneath Archuleta Mesa, but what secrets we've already accepted living above it. How much do we choose not to see? How much of what's hidden is actually in plain sight, disguised as routine, paperwork and policy? Because when power goes underground, whether literally or metaphorically, it doesn't vanish. It multiplies, it evolves, it waits. And if the Dulce story teaches anything, it's that secrecy is the lifeblood of control. Once truth becomes classified, reality can be rewritten. The deeper you dig, the more the ground gives way, not into alien laboratories, but into the murky corridors of human ambition. So, as this journey ends, keep your skepticism sharp, but keep your curiosity sharper. History shows that the unbelievable often hides fragments of truth. And those fragments, when pieced together, can change everything we think we know about who's really in charge. Because the Dulce base may just be a myth, but the world it suggests, that world already exists just beneath the surface. If you followed this investigation from start to finish, you're already part of the search for hidden truth. Don't let it end here. Share this series with someone who questions everything. Leave a comment about what you believe Dulce Base really represents. Alien collaboration, government deception, or psychological warfare. And if you want more deep dives into the conspiracies that shape our reality, from secret experiments and vanished civilizations to the covert networks that may still pull the strings, subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with us as we continue uncovering the unseen. Because in the end, truth doesn't hide in the dark, it hides in plain sight.